New York Yankees catcher Thurman Munson was killed today in the crash of a small airplane.
He'll always be remembered by all the Yankee players here today.
Thurman said, "It's 3,000 fucking words. You were misquoted."
When you think of Thurman Munson, you picture the heart of the 1970s New York Yankees dynasty. He was the warrior who restored a winning culture to a fallen franchise. The first Yankees captain since Lou Gehrig, Munson was a gritty competitor whose tragic death at 32 froze him in time as the ultimate fighter. But behind the legend of the beloved captain, there was a darker truth. Many players, including his own teammates, couldn't stand him. He was, by his own admission, belligerent and surly. This is the story of four MLB legends who absolutely hated Thurman Munson. The hatred for Munson wasn't just from rivals, it came from inside his own clubhouse. When superstar Reggie Jackson arrived in 1977 as a high-priced free agent, it immediately created a schism. Munson, the reigning AL MVP, couldn't handle not being the center of attention. He had a handshake agreement with owner George Steinbrenner that he would always be the highest-paid Yankee. Jackson's massive contract shattered that promise. Munson was left to brood in his corner locker, furious over the financial and symbolic slight. The conflict was fundamentally about ego and status. Munson had built his identity as the undisputed leader of the Yankees, the tough catcher who demanded respect through sacrifice and grit. Jackson represented everything Munson despised, the flashy outsider who cared more about personal stardom than team unity. The tension wasn't just about money, it was about what kind of team the Yankees would become. Would they follow Munson's blue-collar work ethic, or would they embrace Jackson's celebrity culture? The tension exploded with an interview in Sport magazine. Jackson was quoted saying, "This team, it all flows from me. I've got to keep it all going. I'm the straw that stirs the drink." He then took a direct shot at Munson. Munson thinks he can be the straw, but he can only stir it bad. Jackson even called his own captain so damned insecure. This article cleaved the clubhouse in two. When Jackson tried to apologize, claiming he was misquoted, Munson delivered his iconic, incredulous response. For 4 bleeping pages, this cemented the Cold War within the team. Munson made the toxic environment worse by siding with volatile manager Billy Martin. Munson and Martin were close, and they were firmly allied against Jackson in a vicious triangle. This dysfunction peaked on national TV at Fenway Park. After Jackson appeared to loaf on a fly ball, Martin tried to physically attack his own player in the dugout. Coaches had to physically restrain Martin as cameras zoomed in. Munson, the captain, was right there, backing his manager against his own teammate. The incident exposed Munson's approach to leadership. Rather than bridging the divide between Jackson and Martin, Munson chose sides. He allowed his personal resentment of Jackson to override his responsibility as captain. The team succeeded despite this dysfunction, not because of it. Munson's inability to rise above his jealousy and insecurity created a poisonous atmosphere that could have destroyed the dynasty before it truly began. This intense personal hatred between two superstars on the same team almost tore a dynasty apart. It makes you wonder, what's the biggest teammate feud you can remember? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you're enjoying this look into baseball's most bitter rivalries. While they eventually reached an uneasy truce and Jackson even flew on Munson's plane, it was a pragmatic necessity, not a friendship. The fact that Munson was willing to share a small aircraft with a man he despised shows either tremendous maturity or desperate pragmatism. Most likely it was the latter. Munson understood that winning championships required Jackson's talent, even if it meant swallowing his pride. But make no mistake, Munson, the supposed leader, was the source of a deep, bitter division that defined the Bronx Zoo. The Yankees won back-to-back World Series in 1977 and 1978, but the clubhouse remained fractured throughout both championship seasons. Jackson's heroics in the 1977 World Series, where he hit 3 home runs in the decisive Game 6, only amplified Munson's resentment. While the team celebrated, Munson watched Jackson bask in the spotlight he felt should have been his. The captain had played brilliantly all season, providing steady leadership and clutch hitting, yet Jackson's 3 swings had stolen the narrative. For Munson, it confirmed his worst fear. That flash would always triumph over substance in the media's eyes. The following season brought more tension. Munson's body was breaking down from years of catching, and his offensive numbers declined slightly. Meanwhile, Jackson remained productive and continued to dominate headlines. The contrast became starker with each passing month. Munson's style of leadership, built on sacrifice and suffering, was literally destroying his body, while Jackson's style of celebrity seemed effortless and sustainable. It was a fundamental clash of philosophies about what it meant to be a champion, and Munson could never accept that both approaches had value. If the feud with Jackson was a civil war, Munson's battle with Red Sox catcher Carlton Fisk was an all-out war. This was the personal embodiment of the Yankees-Red Sox rivalry, and it was fueled by Munson's insecurities. players. The media cast them as perfect foils. Munson was the gruff Yankees captain who felt overlooked. Fisk was the clean-shaven young star embraced by the media. This narrative infuriated Munson, who was perpetually irritated by the praise directed at his Boston counterpart. What made the rivalry particularly bitter was how the media amplified every comparison. Broadcasters like Curt Godey, a former Red Sox announcer, seemed to favor Fisk in their commentary. Every time Munson turned on the television or opened a newspaper, he was confronted with another article celebrating Fisk's photogenic athleticism while downplaying his own gritty effectiveness. For Munson, who already felt disrespected despite his success, this constant media bias became unbearable. This simmering dislike boiled over on August 1, 1973 at Fenway Park. It was the top of the ninth, score tied 2-2, with first place on the line. Munson was on third for a suicide squeeze bunt. Yankees shortstop Gene Michael missed the bunt entirely. Munson should have been a dead duck, but he kept charging, barreling toward the plate. The decision to keep running revealed everything about Munson's psychology. A more cautious player would have stopped and accepted the out, but Munson saw an opportunity to make a statement, to prove his toughness against the man the media loved more than him. This wasn't just about scoring a run, it was about asserting dominance over his rival. Munson crashed into Fisk with full force. Fisk held on for the out, but the play wasn't over. As Munson lay on top of Fisk, Fisk kicked him off, and fists began to fly. The benches emptied in a chaotic 10-minute brawl. One account described Munson as a maniac, throwing as many punches as possible to Fisk's face and body. The fight became a defining moment in the rivalry, a violent declaration that Munson would not be overshadowed. The fight cemented a genuine, lasting hatred. In the clubhouse, a defiant Munson told the press, "Go ask him who won the fight, he knows." When a reporter asked if Fisk was scratched up, Munson smiled sarcastically and replied, "What a bleeping shame." From then on, their interactions were cold and confrontational. Every Yankees-Red Sox series became a personal battle between two men who genuinely despised each other. The animosity between Munson and Fisk went deeper than most baseball rivalries. It wasn't manufactured for the cameras or exaggerated by the media. These two men truly hated each other, with a passion that bordered on obsession. Years after the brawl, when Fisk made critical comments about Munson in the press, Munson sought him out before a game to confront him directly. The brief exchange, where Munson told Fisk he never said anything bad about him, and Fisk simply walked away without responding, revealed the depth of their mutual contempt. Neither man could let it go, even as time passed and their team's fortunes changed. Munson's combativeness often radiated outward, creating collateral feuds. The most notable victim was the eccentric Boston pitcher Bill Spaceman Lee. This entire conflict was a direct result of Munson's 1973 brawl with Fisk. In the aftermath, Lee delivered his famous witty quip, saying the Yankees fought like a bunch of hookers swinging their purses. This was a verbal jab aimed directly at the tough guy identity personified by Munson. The comment exposed a fundamental difference in how the two teams approached the rivalry. The Red Sox used humor and wit as weapons. The Yankees, under Munson's influence, used violence and intimidation. Lee's joke was designed to emasculate the Yankees, to suggest that their toughness was performative rather than genuine. For a team that prided itself on physical dominance, this was the ultimate insult. The Yankees, fiercely loyal to their captain, did not forget. 3 years later, on May 20th, 1976, another brawl erupted after Lou Piniella slid hard into Carlton Fisk. As the benches cleared, Yankees third baseman Greg Nettles, who had a long memory, made a beeline for Bill Lee. In a clear act of targeted retaliation for the insult against Munson's crew, Nettles grabbed Lee, lifted him into the air, and slammed him to the ground. Lee landed awkwardly on his left pitching shoulder, suffering a torn ligament that ruined his season and permanently altered his career. The brutality of the attack shocked even hardened baseball observers. Nettles didn't just fight Lee in the heat of the moment. He specifically targeted him, lifted him high enough to ensure maximum damage, and drove him into the ground with deliberate force. This wasn't a fight. It was an assault designed to inflict lasting harm, and it worked. Lee was never the same pitcher after that injury. Munson himself was not in the middle of the Nettles-Lee fight, but his original brawl with Fisk was its undeniable cause. Nettles' action was a violent defense of his captain's honor. It showed that Munson's leadership was about creating a gang mentality where an insult to one was an insult to all. The Yankees, led by Munson, used physical intimidation, not wit, to settle scores. Years later, Nettles confirmed the connection, telling reporters he remembered what Lee said about the Yankees fighting like hookers and wanted to show him how tough those hookers could be. Munson's deep-seated insecurities weren't limited to his own league. He fought a one-sided psychological battle against Cincinnati Reds catcher Johnny Bench. Throughout the 1970s, the media debated who was the best catcher in baseball, and the consensus choice was almost always Johnny Bench. This mattered deeply to Munson, who felt he was perennially in Bench's shadow. Here's the most telling part. There is little evidence to suggest Bench was similarly invested. For Bench, the debate was just just background noise. For Munson, it was a core motivation. This asymmetry made Munson's obsession even more pathetic. While Munson spent sleepless nights worrying about his place in history, Bench simply played his game and collected accolades. Bench didn't need to prove himself against Munson because everyone already considered him the best. The more Munson fought for recognition, the more he reinforced the perception that he was second-rate. The only time the two met for a championship was the 1976 World Series. It was a disaster for New York, as Bench's big red machine swept the Yankees in 4 straight games. Munson was brilliant in defeat, hitting .529 in a desperate, defiant attempt to prove his worth on the same field. But Bench was even better. He hit .533 with 2 home runs and 6 RBIs to win the World Series MVP award. The final public humiliation came after the series. When a reporter asked Reds manager Sparky Anderson to praise Munson's stellar play, Anderson delivered the infamous crushing line, "Don't ever embarrass a man by comparing him to Johnny Bench." Though Anderson later apologized, the comment was a public slight that confirmed all of Munson's deepest professional insecurities. Anderson's words weren't just dismissive, they were condescending, suggesting that even mentioning Munson in the same breath as Bench was an insult to the great Cincinnati catcher. The statistics from that decade show why Munson was so insecure. While Munson was the better pure hitter, Bench was the era's premier power-hitting catcher, dominating in home runs and RBIs. Munson's frustration was that his own skills were being undervalued. He simply couldn't escape Bench's shadow. In an era that increasingly valued power over contact hitting, Munson's traditional skills seemed outdated, even though they were objectively excellent. Munson collected more hits and maintained a higher batting average than Bench throughout the 1970s, yet Bench won 10 Gold Gloves to Munson's 3. The Gold Glove discrepancy particularly galled Munson, who believed his defensive skills were superior. By many statistical measures, Munson was right. He caught more innings, threw out more runners, and posted a higher caught-stealing percentage. Yet the awards kept going to Bench, reinforcing Munson's belief that the system was rigged against him. Munson's career, defined by all this conflict, was cut tragically short on August 2, 1979. He was practicing touch-and-go landings in his new Cessna jet near his Ohio home. The aircraft crashed short of the runway, and Munson, trapped in the pilot's seat, perished in the fire. He was only 32 years old. His sudden death froze him in time as the ultimate warrior. The tragedy instantly transformed the public narrative, shifting it away from his difficult personality and the clubhouse conflicts. He was no longer the gruff and surly brawler. He was a fallen hero. In the end, the true measure of a warrior is the respect he earns from his enemies. In the years after his death, the animosity from his rivals faded, replaced by a deep appreciation for his unrelenting competitive fire. Even Reggie Jackson, the man he feuded with in his own clubhouse, later said that if Munson had lived, the Yankees would have won 2 more World Series titles. But the most powerful testament came from his greatest adversary, Carlton Fisk. Fisk, the man he fought at home plate, said, "The resurgence of the Yankees as winners was due to one man's efforts in particular, and that man was Thurman Munson. Coming from his arch rival, it is the ultimate tribute." What do you think? Was Munson's combative nature the necessary fuel for a dynasty? Or was he a toxic leader who succeeded in spite of himself? Let me know. Thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.